It's time for the Chapter and Chatter Cafe with Camden County Library District Director, Professor Jim Paisley.
I'm a silent partner, remember?
Good morning. Welcome back to Chapter and Chatter. Glad to have you with us. Coley?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you ready for this?
I guess.
All right.
Are you?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a topic. No.
Well, okay.
Just kidding.
That's not what I told everybody else.
Our last show, we talked about Missouri and its input into the war effort in World War II. And there were a lot of things that we really needed to talk about that go beyond just Missouri. And we know we've got an audience that expands out quite a ways. We've got friends in Florida and Arizona, all those lucky people that are down south. So, hi, guys.
Hey, but it's going to be warm here next week.
That's right. It's supposed to be, what, 70?
I read Christmas? 72 for Christmas.
Well, there you go.
So,
that'll work. I'm good with it.
It'll be warm.
Take the boat out, right?
I'd like to see another white Christmas sometime.
Well, get in your car and go to it. There's plenty of it just north of it.
But why should I have to travel? It should come to me.
Well, we'll talk about that later. So today we're going to talk military industrialism, and it's kind of an interesting topic in that in this day and age, everybody wants to complain about, oh, big business, oh, those rotten good-for-nothings, and the government regulations and so on and so forth. And as we talked a little bit in last month's show, we talked about the fact that you could walk out to an empty field and build an entire factory in 6 months' time.
After we did last month's show, my husband likes to watch anything on World War II.
Yeah.
And we have TV on all night long pretty much, but the other morning I woke up and it was war factories, and that's exactly what it was on, was World War II era factories.
Wow.
And I was like, hey, I know some of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, don't you wish, you'd love to go back in time and see that.
Well, that was the thing is, I know we talked about, how they were able to retool things and do and manufacture stuff for the war. And I know I kind of mentioned Henry Ford and all that, but I didn't realize at first he had rejected it.
Absolutely.
And then they went to Hewlett-Packard.
Right.
Or Packard.
Yes.
For their factories. Yeah, and now that's just in ruins.
Yeah, there's a really good book. We have a library here, by the way.
We do have a library here. We have 6 of them, actually.
It's called Arsenal for Democracy.
Arsenal for Democracy.
Yes, and it is excellent. It's excellent, and it gets into the whole thing of building the great big Liberator bombers at Willow Run. And it was a car manufacturing for Ford, and Henry was opposed to it.
Yes.
He didn't want to build it, but it was his son, Edsel, who made the push for it. And, he even went so far as this was like a big park that Henry had put in the community and everything, with the swing sets and all that, and his son comes in there and dozes the thing down to build this Willow Run plant. So, yeah, Christmas at their house had to be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah,
so,
for a little while anyway.
Yeah, so here we are. We're going to have to dive into this war effort. And it is interesting because there's so many parallels in history. Today we're talking about all the AI change that's coming, and one of the big things there is energy. And, you can't do it if you don't have the energy. I think we talked about the munitions plant in St. Louis and the amount of energy it took to run that thing every day.
Well, how many coal carts was it a day?
Oh, it was like unbelievable, plus the electricity, the oil, the fuel. I mean, unbelievable.
Yes.
And so here we are. We're almost at the edge of that again. AI is sitting there, but it can't run because there's not enough power to generate for all these things, and they're talking about building separate plants. Well, again, what we're seeing is a partnership between the government and these industries to make it happen. And that's exactly what happened in World War II. People like Roosevelt knew that we had the technology, but they also knew that government workers building airplanes and tanks, not such a good idea. I was a state worker for a long time, trust me.
You couldn't put together a plane?
No, I don't think so. I'd have had a hard time just, building cots, anything, So here we are, we find ourselves in a critical moment where we've got to turn around and move forward building things in an effort for this war. Now, bear in mind, we didn't get into the war for 2 years. The war had been going on for 2 years, but we could see it coming. We're coming out of the Great Depression. We could see where these problems were going to be, and we realized that we had the intelligence, we had the capacity, we had everything we needed to build a war machine. And so we started doing that before the war actually started, okay? And we supplied a lot of material and all the things necessary for England to stay in the war, okay? Now, it was extraordinary in the mobilization that took place and how fast it happened. We talked about how you could build a factory in 6 months.
Right.
Well, that happens when you do away with all the regulations, you know.
No more red tape?
Right, no more red tape. Now, 17 million new jobs were created. 17 million
That's a lot of jobs.
That's a lot of jobs. Industrial productivity increased by 96%. And needless to say, corporate profits doubled. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, they made a fortune on the war, all right? But they were also contributing to the war effort, all right? So without them, have any of you read Atlas Shrugged? Yes, excellent book. Again, we got a library here.
We've got that one. I know we've got that one.
And it talks all about, you know, how dependent the world is on industry and on the people, the champions of industry. You can't make it without them. Really interesting book, and it was interesting that it was written in the 50s. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so kind of an interesting approach to things. I highly recommend it. Now, these government expenditures, the government steps in and tries to bring about business recovery after the Great Depression, okay? Now, basically, the war needs consumed over a third of the output of industry. A third of everything we made went to the war effort. We were on a war footing is what they call it, okay? Now, by 1944, as a result of wage increases and overtime pay, real weekly wages before taxes and manufacturing were 50% higher than in 39, okay?
Nice.
So, you know, again, you're coming out of the Great Depression where people are living in boxes, cardboard boxes, and now all of a sudden, if you want a job, there's one there. And it paid well, okay?
Right.
And so also all sorts of new technologies, all sorts of new industries, all these things sprang forth as a result of the war effort. You know, now all of a sudden we're seeing things like nylon, which nobody had even heard of. You know, the people that made parachutes was a lingerie factory. Yes. I have guns at home that were made at the Singer sewing machine plant.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, and so everybody, you know, the equipment was there, the people were there. It just took a matter of somebody pulling it all together and making it happen. And that's what we're going to talk about. Now, the war effort brought full employment and actually a fairer distribution of income simply because of the fact everybody needed to pitch in. You know, it wasn't just the man went to work. Now all of a sudden, you know, if you can fog a mirror, we're going to put you in a factory somewhere and you're going to work. And that's exactly what happened, all right? This is where we see a huge change in the employment of blacks in the community, the employment of women in the community. Prior to that, it was like kind of an old Dickens novel, you know. The man went off to work and everybody else had their place in society. Well, all of that got struck to the side and said, we need people. And that's what we did. We threw people at it, okay? Now, in addition, because of the mobilization, it included the argument, you know, basically that the war was being fought for the common man. And that was a key theme here. You know, nowadays, like I say, everybody wants to put corporation in as the evil empire. But what happens here is it was a war effort, a complete war effort where everybody realizes we've got to stop Nazi Germany. And so everybody pitched in.
Well, that's the only thing that they could do. I mean,
yes,
couldn't be for every man for himself. It's
right. They had a common theme, if you will.
Yes,
and
so
I
think that's
everybody was willing to dive in and do this. Now, public opinion held that veterans should not return jobless after the war was over, and it led to the GI Bill, another huge impact on society because these guys came home from the war, and here's the GI Bill, which provided an education for them. And so we have our baby boomers.
right.
Those baby boomers came back with all kinds of really good skills about how to run a tank, etc. But now we kept up the effort with those veterans and we sent them to college. And that's part of the reason why we saw this boom in industry after the war. Because now we had people with skills, we had people with education. Again, we had the industry set up, ready to go, and boom, look what happened. All right, so there were a lot of pluses involved in this whole industrialization
Yes,
thing.
there was.
Now, most historians will agree that we won the war at the production line. That's how we did it. We were able to produce more stuff than any other country in the world.
But we banded together.
And, even when we were taking it on the chin and losing planes, as fast as our enemies were knocking them down, we were building more.
We were getting them out the...
Yeah. Now, World War II provided a lot of ideological breakthroughs that finally allowed the U.S. government to come out of the Great Depression. The problem was in the past, like I say, there was industry and leaders of industry over here and the government over here, and they were at each other's throats. That's what wasn't happening. What happened to change everything is FDR, rather than fight these industries, he reached across the aisle and he'd sit right down there with them and said, guys, you know how to do this stuff. He said, all I can provide is money.
Right.
And he said, and that was the partnership that they had. And of course, corporations are saying, oh yeah. And then once you provide us the money, you're going to come in here and tell us we have to do this and this and this and jump through all these hoops, and that's where the problems are. Does any of that sound familiar? Right? Yeah. And so what happened is FDR said, no. He said, we'll provide the money. You guys still own the factories. You still make the calls on how to do this because we don't know how. And that was key. That was absolutely key. And you got to hand it to FDR for stepping up and saying, all right, let's do this. And that's why you could build a factory in 6 months' time, okay? Now, basically, FDR really went out on a limb. In 38, he had lost the working majority in Congress, okay? He didn't have Congress backing him. But, every time he'd put in one of his New Deal programs to try and make things work, it seemed like they were fighting him on it. But when the economy started to bounce back, FDR actually pulled back on government spending to balance the budget. And basically what we see happen is that for a time, the government itself now becomes a purchaser of 1/2 of all the goods produced in the United States. Half of everything that was produced, the government paid for. Yeah, hard to believe, right?
It is a little hard to believe.
Now, what's interesting is that the government intervened far more deeply in World War I by imposing wage and price controls, and they found out that didn't work. So they said, we need to get our hands out of this. We need to give these guys carte blanche, basically. Go in and tell them, we need 1,000 tanks. And
let them have
at it. And we're not going to come in and say, you can only pay this much, and you can only charge this much for it. That went out the window, okay? Now, after 1940, okay, we're basically right on the brink of being drug into this conflict, okay? Basically, antitrust enforcement shut down. Liberals were upset as all get out at Alcoa Aluminum, of all people. Now, aluminum was used for airplanes, you name it. I mean, it was a huge, huge industry.
Yes,
and
it was.
Alcoa, was the big bad monopoly. Again, a lot of similarities here,
Yes.
okay? Now, the government comes in and finances their competitor, which was Reynolds Aluminum, all right? And everybody's like, wait a minute, can you do that? Well, what it did is it motivated Alcoa then to produce aluminum. So we're going to have to crank it up so that we compete with Reynolds Aluminum. And so this...
Friendly competition?
Yes, capitalism at its best was taking place to see who could produce more aluminum and get more government contracts. Kind of a nifty idea, right? Now, but despite his partnership with big business, FDR was still willing to go forward on the employment of minorities and women. He said, everybody's off fighting a war. We need people. And so with that, when he'd get pushback and say, no, you're going to eliminate jobs for guys, They were.
Who was it? Who were they
Where
going
are
to?
they? Yes, and so now all of a sudden there was a huge push by the government to get people. This is your Rosie the Riveter days.
Yes,
To get
it
them
is.
to step up and go to work. Now this, think about the shift there. I mean, we could do a whole show on women stepping up to the plate.
And we could.
And here, I'll say it, I'll get in trouble for this, but women won this war for us. They were home producing
Well,
all that stuff.
you're not the only one that said that.
Yes, and it's amazing in that if we hadn't had them in the workforce and taking on these new jobs. Now,
Who's
bear
gonna
in
do
mind,
it? All the men
you're
are off
home
fighting.
taking care of kids. And next thing you know, you're riveting panels on a B-29 bomber.
Heck yeah, I am.
Yeah, which is amazing, and it's almost got to make you wonder today if you approached all of what are they, Gen Zs? I don't know for sure what they are now. I've
Well,
lost
I think there's
track.
alphas now, and
Yeah, whatever, but
Gen Z is a little bit older, I think, but
but can
you're
you
right.
see going to all of these women in the country and say, forget what you're doing now. All your jobs that you have, we want you to now come to work in this factory. And it's a total effort by the country to make this happen to save democracy.
I think there would be some.
I think there'd be some, but I think there'd also be some, out there waving their, like they do, raising hell and saying, you
Well,
can't
I
make me
think
do
that
this.
I think anymore. I think you're going to find that with across any generation.
You're right.
It's not just a certain subset of the generations. I think you're going to find that across all generations.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Because
but it would be interesting, wouldn't it, to see the difference between how the country steps forward now versus back in the 40s.
So again, we always say that history repeats itself, which we can see it's doing. And like you said, would these people be able to step up? Would we, and not just even women or even minorities, us as a collective whole, could we work together
Right.
to accomplish anything? Or is there going to be too much infighting and saying, well, I can do it better this way, or
I think,
or is that, or do you think there could be a cohesive unit?
well, I think probably the big issue was coming out of the Depression, everybody was dependent on the government.
And everybody was wanting to go back to work.
And bingo, there you hit it, because now the difference was we had a cause, we had a reason. And rather than being dependent on the government, people pulled up their bootstraps and said, I want to have pride in my work, I want to learn a skill, and they went to work and did it. And again, this had a tremendous impact on our society even today.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely amazing what they were able to do. Now, basically, Roosevelt made the decision that he had to mobilize the owners of the factories and the mines and the shops and everywhere. And he realized Congress could provide the money, but again, he knew state workers didn't know how to do this. And so he brought the two components together. That was the big change, okay? And
Okay, let me ask this.
Yeah.
Do you think any other president at that time, if somebody else had been president at that time, could have done the same thing that he did?
No.
No?
No, I think he
was
had
in the
this-
right spot at the right time.
He was kind of like your benevolent uncle, if you will. With his fireside chats, he had this demeanor about it. Under the previous administrations, even the one we have now, it would be, drop what you're doing, you're going to work in a factory. He had a way of inspiring people. And,
Making it think there was their own idea, maybe?
yeah, he just, I mean,
Rather than saying you need to go do it.
he was an amazing individual. He really was, in that he was able to apply reason, if you will.
And I think that's what it takes sometimes.
and he
is
wasn't-
Sometimes we don't have that.
And he wasn't forcing people.
Right, he
He's
was
saying,
just saying,
here it
"Hey,
is,
This is the situation we're
He's-
in. This is
Fireside chats, he'd say, hey, if there's not a job in your town, put a mattress on the roof of your car and head to the next one. There's going to be a job. And people would do it.
Well, there you go.
Literally,
So
there
he
are
was just- he
pictures
was-
on the highway of cars going down the road with mattresses on top of them. And you're thinking, where are you going? I don't know. Somebody said there's work up here.
Somebody says there's a job over here. I'm
Off
going to
they
go to it.
It's just really amazing, Now, the challenge was to bring the owners of the nation's big factories into the defense effort, okay, and make them active participants. Because prior to this, big industry, they'd say, well, I don't care. I'll sell it to Argentina. I'll sell it to Japan. I'll sell it
To whoever I want.
Whoever I want, yeah. But now, all of a sudden, they realize this is an effort for us,
Right.
for our country, okay? Now, what happened is that they said, well, if we expand our factories and we invest all this money in expanding a factory, what happens after the war when I've got all these factories and I've got no need for the stuff?
And I guess that's kind of where my thought is. I mean, they're going to have to retool again.
Right, right. Well, his answer to that was, tell you what, you build it, and what we're going to do is we're going to build it on a lease system. We will lease the square footage to you, and at the end of the war, if you don't need it, it goes back to the government. We'll just use it as a warehouse or whatever. So basically, he was doing everything he could to convince them, you know, this is going to be a plus for you as we go through it too. And
so they're not. I guess they're not sitting on something that they can't get rid of, or
exactly.
the government's going to buy it back or take it back
of course,
or whatever.
there's also this issue of trust in government back then, right? Nowadays, if they told you that, they'd be going, yeah,
okay.
Right, yeah. Can I get that in writing?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, may not matter. Now, the federal government came up with something called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. And what it did is it provided the money to expand all of these factories, okay? And most of the time, like I say, they would just lease this to the factory itself. So the government is leasing these huge manufacturing plants, okay? They also developed new sources of supply for the materials. They basically took over the transportation industry to give all the war materials priority on rail lines.
I could see that.
And shipping. They went into the business of producing things like synthetic rubber, which is amazing. The aluminum, all of a sudden, it's a whole different critter. Okay, and so these emerging industries now created even more jobs.
Right.
Some of you, I don't know, I may be the only one old enough. The rubber, before we had synthetic rubber, it would peel off. It would get hard and brittle, and it would peel off in layers. It wasn't tangible like it is now. You know, I saw up here this morning coming in, somebody's got a bunch of tires they're just giving away. Well,
yes.
It's because they'll last forever. Not back then, you know, and they used to use these things, use the rubber, they would coat canvas and make it waterproof.
Yeah, I've
or
heard
your
that,
boots,
yes.
they would cover it, you know,
Yes.
same thing. So again, here's a new industry, you know, and so factories had to be built to produce the
Vulcanized.
rubber. Yeah, the vulcanized, yes, exactly. Now, Roosevelt, smart, he brings in lots of top executives. He called them $1-a-year men to help run the government commissions.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. And businesses didn't feel that the government was making decisions without them. So they were at the table, okay?
Right.
Which is
They were involved.
kind of what you're seeing today. More and more we're seeing in the AI thing.
Okay, in the AI thing.
Yeah,
I was like, where are you talking about?
In AI, they're bringing in a lot of these executives and saying, what's it going to take? You know, well, it's going to take factories that are, 100 acres, and it's going to take the building of all sorts of new energy resources, so on and so forth. So they're aware, of what's going to actually happen, all right? He also, and this is key, he let businesses realize profits, okay? They made money. Like I say, they doubled the amount of money they made. Well, that'll get an industry going real good. Yeah, said you're not going to come in and
if they
take
can do it,
off.
I can do it.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so now here they are building up all these new plants and setting up equipment. Now, it's hard for us to imagine today how much of an entrepreneurial spirit could coexist, or how this type of entrepreneurial spirit could coexist with war mobilization, but it did. Business enterprise got bigger and better because people were competing. They wanted those government contracts.
Right.
And so now all of a sudden all kinds of great
Make it a
things
household
are
name.
happening. Yes. Roosevelt started having his fireside chats, and it was interesting in that over and over again he was building the country up, talking about, look at this, they made this is what we're doing. He kept everybody in the loop as they were moving forward.
And I guess maybe that's another big thing, that he was maybe more of a proponent of that than what we see or have seen.
Yes. There were no surprises.
Right.
Yeah, now it's like, what? We're doing what?
Yeah.
But back then,
He laid it out for
he
everybody.
is sharing information. He was one of the first ones to do that, okay? Another interesting thing he did, and this goes all the way back to the Napoleonic days. Napoleon was notorious. He didn't give you money, but what he did is, I deem you the Countess of such and such. You are the Countess of Camden County, and they're going to give you a medal for it, and you're walking around like, hey, I'm doing something here.
Yeah. But
Roosevelt did the same thing. He would turn around at these factories and for the workers and everything, and they had citations they would give you. If you were the top producer on the line that day, you got a citation signed by the president.
So it's kind of like Employee of the Month?
Yes. It was called the E for Excellence Award. Yes. So he was way ahead of McDonald's even with the Employee of the Month, right? Yeah. So bottom line is
did they get their own parking space?
Well, yeah, it might have, and if you're producing more than your competitor did there in the previous quarter, oh boy, there was big celebrations and everything, and everybody took pride in what they were doing, and so a good example of this, Henry Kaiser, this guy, as I recall, he was at Sears before the war effort started. Well, this guy, he was a whiz at getting everything lined out and making things happen, okay, organizing stuff. And he created shipyards where they were able to produce what they called Liberty ships. I mean, we're making all this stuff, but we got to get it to the war.
Where?
And so they were producing these huge Liberty ships. Now, these things, here's good pictures of them. And you can see different stages here. He's doing it like a factory, an assembly line. You can see one on the left, and working its way across, and then one spitting out the end of this thing, okay? And these were the ships that carried all of the manufactured goods to Europe, okay? Now, he started out, it took 365 days to make one boat.
Well,
Right.
I mean...
That's a big boat.
That's a big boat.
Yeah, all right? Well, he said, that's not going to cut it. And so he started his kind of assembly line process of doing this, and he took it from 365 days down to 92 days. And he said, not good enough. And they took it down.
3 months is not good enough?
Right, 62 days. All right?
Okay,
so
I
2 months.
Can see 2 months.
And finally, again, E for excellence, and everybody go, we can do better than this. They were producing a Liberty boat every 24 hours.
How many people did he have working for him?
A bunch.
I'd say.
But think about this. And, they took something that took a year to build.
And condensed it down
to a day. And it was all competitive. Everybody's like, we can do better, we can do better, we can do better, Now, my question is, are you going to put me on that boat and send me across the North Atlantic in something that they built in 24 hours?
Well, that's like last month when we were talking about the planes and how quickly they could get them out. Are you going to fly in that? Would you fly in something like that today if they could put it out?
You go first. Yes.
If they could build a plane that quickly today,
yeah.
would you fly in it?
Think about it. It's just beyond comprehension, you know, and yet they did it, okay?
But again, I think they took pride in their work.
Yes.
And so they were going to do it to the best of their ability.
And here's what was amazing, okay? When you're building boats, the captains of the boats who are already out there doing this would show up at the factory and thank everybody. And they'd have a big party and everything. The guys who were flying those planes, they'd bring them back from delivering the planes and those that were involved in the fighting, they would bring them back to the factories. And they would show up at the factory and personally thank the people on the assembly line for the work that they were doing.
See, I think that makes a big difference.
It does make a hell of a difference, All it takes is,
a simple thank you.
Yes,
A little bit of gratitude.
I mean, even in this day and age, they say that salary ranks 6th on the things that people want from their job.
They want gratitude.
6th, yeah.
Recognition.
Number 1 is recognition. And they caught on to that. And that's what they were doing. I mean, what a great thing to have somebody like Lindbergh walk in and say, what are you doing up there? Yeah, you're doing a great job building these planes. I've flown several of them. What a difference.
Yes.
What a difference that makes, right? War production posters, needless to say, they emphasize that the factories and the GIs were the ones that were winning this war, okay?
Right.
And again, Roosevelt included this in all of his speeches. You know, it was that total war effort, you know, and that sense of pride in what you were actually doing.
And it's just not one subset that was doing it.
No,
It was everybody.
Everybody. That was what was amazing, okay? The military at one point had said, well, maybe what you ought to do is set up a draft and force people to work in the factories. Roosevelt said no.
But he wasn't having to do that because they were willingly doing it.
Exactly, but they, you know, the military, well, we need more people, you know. Well, no. He said, if you build it, they will come, and that's exactly what happened. People did. They came because of a sense of pride. And it's awful hard to sit at home when Sally next door gets up every morning and goes to the factory and building these planes and coming home and talking about the pride in her work and the people that she's meeting.
Yep.
So again, a lot of peer pressure involved there as
Yes.
well. So he didn't have to do it. Now, basically, what we saw happen is that in one fireside chat, he advised people to get maps. Now, this is kind of a funny little thing that happened because people were saying, well, the factory here is full. They don't need any help. Well, he turned around and said, we've got Willow Run, we've got Kansas City, we've got St. Louis, the ordnance plant. We've got all these places. Well, people might live in Ohio or Illinois or wherever. And he said, I would suggest that you get a map and you look where these places are and head there. You'll get a job. And the funny thing that happened is that the Hammond Company in New York sold out of all their maps in one day. Everybody came and got them, got a map. Yes, and we used maps back then, folks. Yeah, it was this
What about
paper thing.
MapQuest?
Yeah, you know, no MapQuest, right? But here people would load up their entire family. Everything they had, loaded on the roof of the car, and off they go.
And I know we joke, but
Yeah.
if you had to go back to a paper map, would you handle it?
Oh, yeah, I can use it.
Oh, I know I can use it too, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, would you be willing to go back to a paper map over
Well,
what's in your phone?
probably not. Although I don't really like that little lady that gets on there and says, recalculating. You know, yeah, that bothers me to death. And it's always that.
Well, maybe if you
that
turn where
evil,
she tells you.
Well, that evil. Well, then maybe that's it. You know, have some British woman in the back seat yelling at me all the time because I missed my turn.
You can change her voice.
Well, can I?
Yes, you can.
Oh, you shouldn't. We need to talk. Yeah, I'll change that for sure. You know, 'cause I don't like her at all. And then you
I
go to
know.
pay for your parking. She's there. You ever notice that? Pull up to a great big high-rise parking place, you know, and the ticket comes out and goes, please take a ticket. It's the same lady. I don't know where she's at. Drives me crazy.
She's
you know?
AI.
Well, and I'm thinking some of the routes she's chosen for me. She's sitting somewhere saying, hold my beer, watch what I'm going to do, you know, and there you are. You know, it's terrible, terrible. So,
He may not have messed with his GP. I mean, we've never
Yes.
messed with your GPS.
well, there it is. You know, yeah, you know, there's a generation gap here, as you can see, right? Now, the almost totally forgotten lesson of the war is that deep government involvement does not mean a government-controlled economy. This is where we're struggling today, okay? Anytime the government wants to get involved, everybody's like, oh, here we go, right? And there's a lot of validity to that.
Well, there is. I mean, because after this,
Right.
what happens when the government sticks their fingers in it?
Yes, exactly. You know, and believe me, I worked for the state. I worked for MoDOT for a while, and you know, trying to go out and build a road now. Oh my God, you got to worry about the snail darters and the, you know, the fruit bats and everything else, and doing an environmental study takes 2 years. Can you imagine if back then said, we need to build this plant that's going to do 1 million rounds a day? Well, we'll have to check on the fruit bats first.
Well,
no.
now how many of those are extinct?
Well, we're not going there. All right? You know, you need bullets or bats, one or the other.
Well, can't you have both?
Evidently not.
Can't you build bat boxes?
I guess we could.
There you go. See,
Again,
compromise.
You can see we have problems here. Now, private property, that was key as well. You know, government has a tendency to come in and confiscate private property to build things.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. That didn't happen. Again, you know, FDR was adamant. He said, no, what we build, you know, that's yours, and we're not going to take it, okay? In the whole World War II experience, the things that we revere about capitalism, the parts that spur energy and efficiency and skills, they were still in place. We didn't usurp them with government control.
Right.
All right. Now, what we saw is, again, lingerie factories, of all things. They were making camouflage netting and parachutes. I mean,
can see
think
it.
about that. How would you like to have been working at that factory? We're making 90s today, and you come in Monday and said, going to do something a little different here today. We're make parachutes. Oh, okay, right? Baby carriages became field hospital carts and food carts and medicine carts.
See, I can see that one.
Yeah, right? Lipstick cases became bomb cases.
I've heard that one before.
Yes, exactly. Beer cans became hand grenades.
I can see that one.
Well, you've probably done that on the river a couple of times, right?
Never.
Yeah, right? There you go. Adding machines became automatic pistols. Vacuum cleaners became gas masks.
I can see these. It's just a changing your viewpoint.
Yeah, it
And
was.
saying,
And
well, how can we retool this, but still use some of the same parts to make what we need?
You know, and somebody had to go in there and look at this thing and say, well, here's what it's making. And then say,
But this is what it could make.
here's what it could make. How do we retool this to make it happen? And it did. It's amazing.
Right.
All right?
Well, that. Like you said, that's amazing. It's always boggled my mind how they could do that.
Now, it's interesting to note that FDR delayed using the automobile factories until the last minute. I mean, basically, you know, he's smart in that we're not going to turn around and take everybody's cars away. Plus,
But I
we
can
also
see that
need
because we needed them also for the war effort.
we needed a mobile.
Because you had your jeeps, you had your tanks,
Exactly.
or your other military vehicles that.
And so, again, they stepped forward and they said, well, you know what? There's an assembly line. Why, instead of a car coming out the end of this thing, how about a tank or a Jeep or a truck or an airplane? Unbelievable, right? Now, in 1942, after delaying, the government finally had to force the automobile industry to step up to the plate. And here, this is what you get, guys. And I mean, again, just looking at the pictures is enough to just blow your mind. Can you imagine walking into a factory?
I know, because I'm trying to figure out how many planes are stacked in there, and that's way too many to even.
And bear in mind,
it brings to mind the C.J. McCall song, and the counting the phone poles and the multiplying by 2 and taking it to the power of 10, and
it's unbelievable.
it is unbelievable.
And bear in mind, this is one day. I know.
In
Some of these cases, they're cranking these things out every 10 days. Every plane that's there is headed to the front. It's just hard to believe. Okay. Now, World War II also made for remarkable social gains. War production plants, basically, like I say, they were really into, this is where you see innovations taking place in the factories, where now, it used to be, you had Simon Legree in charge, or Ebenezer Scrooge, here's a lump of coal for you. Now, all of a sudden, you come to work at these factories and they're having picnics, they're having softball teams, they're having all of the things that we see today, okay? They have canteens, they have health clubs. You name it, they had it to try and foster that sense of camaraderie there at the factory. And we see it today. People struggle with that, okay? Eleanor Roosevelt, of all people, was successful in arguing that a fully productive workforce requires everybody's talents, which included everybody, minorities, women, everybody, and that if women are to work in the factories, who's going to take care of the kids, right?
See, and I love this thought.
And this is a huge issue even today. We still hear it,
You do, because, okay, so when my kids were younger, they're 22 and 19, so when my daughter was first born, it came down to a decision. Do I go back to work and work full-time to pay for her daycare and then not bring anything home?
Yes.
That's why I stayed home for 5 years.
It comes up to the point of you could work, but every penny you're making is paying for the daycare.
That's exactly what it was. That's why, and especially for a newborn. Nobody wants to watch a newborn and not charge an arm and a leg.
True.
So that's why my husband and I made the decision. If he could, and we were blessed at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that we weren't. We didn't have a car payment. We didn't have a house payment. We didn't pay rent. We owned it all free and clear.
Yeah.
Could we do it today? Probably not.
Why not? Yeah.
But at that time, we were fortunate enough that we could.
Well, and bear in mind, going into the war, women stayed home with the kids. That was their job. And now you're asking them to leave
leave the house
and go take a job.
And then find somebody to watch their kids.
Well, who's going to do the full-time job that I had taking care of these kids? That was a huge issue, okay? Well, Eleanor Roosevelt, of all people, saw this, okay? And she proved that the absentee rates were higher in the factories because women were worried about taking care of their kids.
Right.
Okay? So she did some really great ideas. She went to restaurants and got them to prepare hot meals so women could bring home food after they'd spent a shift at the factory.
That's a big one there, too.
Yeah, you know, because somebody's going to have to come home and cook, and they aren't going to feel much like cooking a meal for their kids and their husband at the end of the day. And, you know, they're like, really? Okay, so she tackled that. Productivity rates soared at the factories where she came up with solutions, okay? When Henry Kaiser built his shipyard, and by the way, they called him Sir Ships-a-Lot. That was his nickname, Sir Ships-a-Lot. I like that, you know. The government paid for a 24-hour child daycare center. Unheard of. Now, bear in mind, we're talking in the 40s, folks. Now, why can we not do that today?
I was going to ask that question, but that's a loaded question.
I mean, think about that, okay?
There's a lot of things that I question that we could do here that we can't seem to.
And it was a state-of-the-art facility. They had the best nursery school teachers, and it was, you know, like a jump start on education for these kids. Okay?
Exactly.
And again, you know, everybody's contributing to the war effort. So you've got somebody that's maybe has some sort of a disability, a wheelchair bound or whatever it might be, and for that reason they can't go work in a factory. They can't do it. But can you babysit kids?
Sure.
Heck yeah, I've been doing it my whole life. And so everybody had a job.
Everybody had something to do.
Everybody had something to do. And so these people showed up and started taking care of them, okay? Now, every worker on every shift could bring their children to these daycare centers. That if they worked at night, they could bring the kids and let them spend the night there.
See, that's
and take
ideal.
care of them. Yeah, And while the kids are there, they're receiving an education. Those children, especially from lower middle class families, showed enormous gains.
I'm sure.
As a result of this. Rather than just sitting home all day, now all of a sudden, we're educating the children. A great idea, all right? Now, the problem with this is that when the war ended, the day after they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, all the teachers got their dismissal notices. They didn't do it anymore.
See, I think they should have figured out a way to continue that. But again,
there are so many things
that they should have continued.
They should have continued, right?
I agree.
And so, I mean, when you go back and look at all of this, you're thinking, what kills me is today they make the argument, well, we can't do that. We did it.
See, that's what I was saying.
And it worked.
Why can't? Well, we've done it before. It worked.
Yes.
So you can't tell me today, with all of our technology and skills and all that, we can't.
Right.
We can't do it.
Right. How many people are on the government dole right now that if you brought them in, trained them, and had them as babysitters? Right?
Why not?
They're learning a skill. They're getting into the education field. Why can't we do that? You know,
your guess is as good as mine.
Exactly. Well, there you go. So, I mean, it's a huge issue, okay? Now, it's interesting. Back in the 1930s, before all this effort started, because of the scarcity of jobs, some states actually passed laws that women couldn't go to work because they were taking a job from a man, right? And none of the guys are...
What if they were the only ones that could work?
I don't know. I guess you went on welfare or some form of it, you know. Yeah. Again.
I mean, what if you lived by yourself?
Yeah, these are great questions. I have no answers. Yeah, right. Now, the war was financed through a combination of taxes and bonds, but FDR's control of the Federal Reserve also made a huge difference, and he guaranteed that the interest rates would stay low. Okay, because this thing could have gone completely off the rails if the interest rates went to 12, 15%, okay? Now, wage and price control and rationing made sure that full employment and shortages did not create inflation. Public investment provided the capital that the factories needed. People bought war bonds. That was a huge effort, okay? So the people are invested in this thing as well, all right? Labor business alliances assured that there weren't any strikes. In short, government was a source of full employment, economic recovery, and technological breakthroughs. What a novel concept, right? Now, can we obtain the same benefits today? Can it be done without a war? Roosevelt did it, right?
He did. But
So why can we not do that?
again, it goes back to that question.
Right.
Why?
Now think about it. We could have a great deal more public investment in technology, infrastructure, and training. We don't want wage and price controls. That's the last thing we want.
No.
But to achieve the same restraint, we can certainly have the economists basically put together an income policy, if you will, tying wages to real productivity. In other words, what we had here.
Right.
Okay? And you know, if your factory's doing great,
Then you get a raise.
exactly. Okay? If they had daycares in war production plants in 42, again, why can't we have them now? With industry short of capital and banking system reeling, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation could also be reestablished. Again, they keep talking about trying to build all of these, what do you call them, server farms
Oh,
and all
yes.
this and
Yeah,
everything,
yes.
okay? You know, again, the big issue is where's the money come from? 50 years ago, the common desire to win the war and the feeling of revenge against the Japanese and the Nazis created a national sense of community. There's what's missing.
I was going to say, I think you nailed it right on the head there, is the national sense of community.
Right.
I don't think we have that.
Yes. We're all in this together, and now it's every man for himself.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Yes, and that's created huge problems, okay? Now, the task that our current administration has is to create an understanding in the citizens of the U.S. that our competitive economic position in the world today is a war. We're in an economic war. China is building factories left and right.
They are.
With all of this AI stuff. Everybody else out there is producing.
Well, that's the thing is that we've advanced technologically enough that there are more countries that are able to do this on a
Well-
lower, you know.
And understand, we have shipped most of the jobs overseas.
Yes, we have.
We're dependent on China for a lot of things, antibiotics, you name it, okay? And now here we are, we're in this basically the same position that we were coming out of the Great Depression. There was an empty field sitting up there in Kansas City,
Yes, there was.
and in a month's time, they're cranking out 1 million bullets a day. It can be done, but do we want to do it? Do we have people pulling together, or do we say, no, it's easier just to buy it from China? It's cheaper.
Well, that's the thing right there. You just said it. It's cheaper for us to buy it than it is for us to produce it right now.
Until somebody says you can't have it.
But then again, is it something that we actually need, or is it just something that we think we need?
Well, I think we'd have been a little hard pressed to get the Japanese or the Germans to build planes for us.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying, I mean,
So-
some of the things that we say that we need
Right.
and that we get cheaply are not what we
Exactly.
need to live our life.
There you go.
Do we live beyond our means? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Could we live more simply? Yes.
Yes. Now
So-
you're just talking crazy talk.
I know.
I know. I know.
Look at me.
Right? Now, bottom line is, like I say, to me, we're at war right now, an economic war, okay? And it's every bit as deadly as what this war was. Every bit as much, okay? We still have the resources and the talent. It's out there.
It is out
You
there.
see it every day. And yet, we're not tapping into that. We could do any of this right now and do it even better and faster, but we're not doing it.
Well,
That's
and I
the
think
problem.
on that, I think again on that economic side, I think even what we've looked at recently is that we have the jobs out there, but then again, we've been spoiled on some cases when we worked from home, and we were able to pay those people more because we're not paying rent on a building, we're not paying maintenance on a building, we're not paying for them to sit in a physical office.
Well,
And so now to try to get them back into a physical space, you've got to pay them more to make it worth their time.
and you've hit on something really important. Everybody out there that's working in a job right now, do you feel like you're contributing?
To society or to?
I'm asking. Or are they just working to get their paycheck so they can make it to the
I
next
think
week?
I'm working to, but that's just my personal
I
thought.
didn't mean you, but I'm saying,
But
looking
I
at
again,
it
I-
as a nation, how
I
many
think we're
people...
just working for a paycheck.
Yes. How many people in the United States right now feel like they're contributing to the effort of making this the greatest democracy in the world?
I think it's just,
I did my job today.
I've got my
Turn the
pay.
computer off and I'm going home.
Exactly.
I got my check, right?
And I think that's, I don't think people have as much pride in their work as they used to.
We need to give them a cause, give them a reason,
Yes.
right? Now, there have been critical moments in the past, as we've seen, where the people have stepped up to the plate, the government has stepped up to the plate, and we were able to be successful. We need to do that again. I mean, we did it before, we can do it again, all right? Now, just as World War II showed this power of collective effort, today our communities thrive when we come together. That's the key, okay? So, off to you. Let's talk library and what we can do to contribute to a little bit of this.
Well, what the library can do. Well, just as World War II showed us the power of collective effort, like you said, today our communities thrive when we come together and to learn and grow.
Yes.
It's the only way we can survive, I think. And that's why we're excited to share some of our upcoming events.
Good.
So, have you ever wanted to learn a second language?
I have.
You have?
You're looking at one of those poor kids in St. Louis private school that took French, Latin, and Spanish all 4 years. I came out, I couldn't even speak English. I was so screwed up. And I've always wanted to go back and learn not Latin. Not Latin. That was
Actually,
not
I think
good.
Latin would be kind of cool.
You're looking at the only person on the planet that flunked Latin. I had to take
I don't know. I think
Latin summer school. Now you talk about, I'm going straight to heaven because I've been to hell, believe me.
Oh,
But
Lord.
bottom line is, yes, I'd love to go back. Spanish, I would love to
learn how to do that.
master Spanish.
So we do have an event coming up tomorrow, actually, here at the Camden Library. We are going to do, Josiah is actually going to teach this, is how to use our resources that we have here to teach yourself a second language.
Cool.
And one of the things that we have is Mango Languages. It's a language learning app, basically. Is
Mango languages?
Mango Languages.
Can you teach me Czechoslovakian?
Sure. There's 70 plus languages on that.
70 languages.
70 languages, at least 70 languages.
I can't even do one. I'm going to have to dive into this.
And
one.
I always have to say, my
Yeah.
favorite one is pirate.
Pirate?
Pirate, learn how to
Pirate.
talk like a pirate.
They even have pirate.
They do, yes.
All right, great.
So,
we ought to do an entire show in pirate.
that would be hilarious.
Yes, hi, matey.
So whether it's you're planning a trip, brushing it up, maybe you want to learn again, forgotten it, or just want to learn for fun, we invite you to join us for this relaxed atmosphere and just come in and learn different ways of learning those languages.
So I need to dive into that. The only Spanish I learned out of it was el baño, the bathroom,
Biblioteca.
and then the other was cerveza, por favor. You know.
Donde está?
And the two
Me llamo.
kind of work together. Beyond that, no comprende. Yeah.
Well, now she made me cough. Oh,
It's all yours, kiddo.
thanks. I'm going to try not to cough here.
All right.
So, next week, we kind of mentioned it earlier. It's going to be a little warm for Christmas, but we do have some upcoming closures.
Okay.
You're letting us have a day off.
Yeah,
Actually, let us have 2 days off in a row.
well, I'm going to give you a lump of coal and send you home for a day.
Fine.
All right.
Sounds about right. So we'll be closed December 24th and 25th. And then the week after, we'll close at 3 p.m. on New Year's Eve, and then be closed all day on New Year's Day.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
and then one of the last things that I'm going to talk about real quick is, have you ever wondered what it would take to become a U.S. citizen?
Yes,
Have you?
I have.
Have you ever, okay, being a history professor and being with the Constitution and things like that, have you ever taken any of the citizenship tests?
I have.
Have you?
And
How did you do?
Not well.
Not well.
No. You know, I'm sitting there thinking, you know how when I had students for 29 years, you know, the big question was, is this going to be on the test? You know, well, that's kind of the way this was. You know, I looked at it and I thought, good grief. You know, yeah, it is. It's interesting.
Excuse me.
When you go through the process to become a citizen, the tests that you have to take are really excellent. You know, and it's amazing to me. It's kind of like when you watch the news and the man on the street goes up to these college students and says, who won the American Revolution, or who are we fighting? And they'd say, the Japanese, and you'd go, what? It's the same sort of thing. They aren't tough questions, but they're things that we learned in grade school, and now you come back and try and remember.
Well, okay, so I kind of took this to KB the other day when I went on the radio, and some of the questions were, how many amendments are there?
Ah, yes.
29.
Yeah, there you go.
He was close, he said 27.
Yeah.
But I took civics in middle school, or
Right.
junior high, it was what it was when I was in there.
Yeah.
Do I remember any of that? I
No.
remember some of them,
Yeah.
but not all of them.
Right.
And that's, and that was one of the things that we had to study. So we're doing a mock citizenship class on January 6th here at the Camden Library from 6 to
Great.
8 for ages 16 and up, just so they get an idea, people get an idea of what it's like. It's not as easy as you think it is to do this. Because, and again, some of these questions you may not have seen or even thought about since you were in junior high
Right.
or high school.
Right.
So could you, as a U.S. citizen, naturalized, answer these questions?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're looking to go through the process. What do you need to expect from this?
Sure.
So that's kind of what we're doing. It's just being an informational piece,
Nice.
telling people, it's just giving them an idea of what it takes to
That'd
become
be
a U.S. citizen.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
So
Awesome. And
That's-
that again is when?
January 6th
Okay. Cool.
from 6 to 8
All right.
here at the Camden Library.
All right.
So
Terrific. Terrific.
that's all I've got this time.
That's all we got this time.
That's all I got this time.
Thank you, everybody,
Thank you.
for tuning in and following us. This, I think, has been kind of an interesting show. It certainly shows how history does repeat itself.
It does. It is. And even, not to get too deep into different things, but I did read something not that long ago about how even certain things are mirroring things that took place before World War II.
That's the bad thing about being a history professor. I watch it happening and I know where this is going, right?
So you got your bomb shelter ready? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right. Well, listen, thank you all very much. Merry
Thank you.
Christmas
Merry
to
Christmas.
everybody.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. And we'll see you next time.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.